Viewers, welcome back to the Now Morning Show. And, today is March 21st, which, we spoke earlier about some of the commemorative days that we are celebrating today, one of which is World Down Syndrome Day. And that is why we rock our socks annually on March 21st. All right, so with us to talk a little bit about some of the activities that are happening today and about World Down Syndrome Day and how we can be advocates, we have Glen Niles. He is the president and founder of the Down Syndrome Family Network. And we also have Laurina Ramkaran. She's a board member of the Down Syndrome Family Network. So good morning, Mr. Niles.
Good morning.
Ms. Ramkaran.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having us.
No problem. So we are going to jump right into it. Mr. Niles, what is World Down Syndrome Day and what is the aim of celebrating today?
All right, well, it's more than just celebrating today, but the United Nations commissioned the 21st of March as World Down Syndrome Day back in September 2011. And so it was first celebrated on the 21st of March 2012. And it was all about having, United Nations have a lot of days, a lot of different things. But it was all about recognizing persons with Down syndrome and making people aware of their potential, regardless of the condition. And interestingly enough, the Down Syndrome Family Network was launched on the 21st of March 2012. So we are actually celebrating our 10th anniversary along with the 10th anniversary of United Nations commissioning the 21st of March as World Down Syndrome Day. So yay us, right? 10 years.
10 years is a very long time. Tell us about some of the strides that you have been able to make as as part of the Down Syndrome Family Network.
Yeah, but it was a long, very interesting journey. And when we started off, it was very shaky. I mean, even conceptualizing the network and what we would like to do, because I basically got all my ideas from international organizations that were very strong advocates for persons with Down syndrome, like the National Down Syndrome Society, the National Down Syndrome Congress, both based in the USA, Down Syndrome International, Inclusion International, the Canadian Down Syndrome Society, and they have been very instrumental in creating a more inclusive society for persons with Down syndrome. And I thought that is what we need here in Trinidad. I mean, we are very segregated when it comes to persons with Down syndrome and other intellectual and even physical disabilities. It's almost as if they are seen as special, and we like to put them in a nice special box and take care of them in a nice special way, when they are actually citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and have the same human rights and should be allowed to take advantage of those rights with regard to education, employment, and all of that, and not be relegated to the fact that if we think that they can't do it, we don't give them an opportunity to even try to do anything.
Yeah, and I noticed that part of the theme is We Decide, and it's hashtag inclusion. Right? And Ms. Ramkaran, you are pivotal in the legislative aspect of hashtag inclusion.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that is, how it's going, and what strides you have been able to make.
Okay, well, when we say inclusion, we mean that we want persons with Down syndrome and persons with disabilities in general to have equal access to things like education, employment, healthcare, and information in general on an equal basis with others, right? And the only way we can do that is through legislation. So Trinidad actually ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2015. So what that means now, in the eyes of international law, Trinidad is now under an obligation to ensure that our national legislation and policies are now in line with that convention. Currently, that is not the situation. So while we have the Equal Opportunities Act, which makes specific mention of persons with disabilities, the definition of a person with a disability in the Act does not include all persons with disabilities. So for example, a person with Down syndrome has an intellectual disability, but they aren't afforded any type of protection under our only legislation that gives protection to persons with disabilities. So what we need now is specific legislation that makes specific mention of persons with disabilities, all disabilities, including a social definition, so that everybody comes under that heading and now have an avenue for legal recourse. So when situations come up where they're discriminated against or they are stopped from having access to certain things, now they have a piece of legislation that they will be able to use to get some type of recourse, right? So we have been advocating for this legislation. We have not seen the fruits of that advocacy as yet, but we are hopeful.
Okay. Do you think that's one of the items on your agenda? We have a new Attorney General now. So is that one of the items on the agenda?
Definitely, because without that legislation, then they basically have no protection. And how is it that we can live in a society where a significant portion of it don't have any legislation with which they could use to advocate for themselves and to protect their human rights?
Yeah, and I mean Trinidad and Tobago, we are one of 164 countries that signed that convention. So, you know, I know for certain that your advocacy will bear fruit. And, you know, today, as we continue to educate others and create public awareness for World Down Syndrome Day and those persons who are living with it and striving with it. Mm-hmm. And one of the activities that you are having today, Mr. Niles, is a webinar. Can you tell us a little bit about what the webinar is about?
All right, well, every year since we actually started, since we launched, we have an international conference, you know, for World Down Syndrome Day. And today is no different, and we'll be having it, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we can't have it on the scale that we used to, with everybody actually coming together and having an after party, which is one of the best parts of the conference for me as a de-stress, you know, partying with the self-advocates. But we are still having the webinar at the Hyatt, so some guests, some specially invited guests, of course, within the parameters of the pandemic and its protocol, would be invited there, and everyone else would be able to tune in on Zoom. We have the link on our Facebook page, LinkedIn, on Instagram, you know, Down Syndrome Family Network. So look up at it. There is no cost. There's no cost.
This is a free webinar.
Yes, it's a free webinar because it's all about creating that awareness. Now, as Laurina mentioned, legislation is very important. And since we started, we've been lobbying for legislation. So we were very instrumental in lobbying the government to ratify the convention, and also in lobbying for the amendment of the National Policy on Persons with Disabilities, which was amended in 2018. But now we need legislation. And over the years that we've been doing this, a lot of people have been saying, legislation doesn't work. It won't make a difference. I always say, give me the legislation. I will show you how it will work. All of us buckle up now, right?
Yes, we do.
All of us get designated drivers if we are going out. Mm-hmm. You know, so legislation actually works, especially when there are penalties involved. And that is exactly why we need legislation, because it would be not only to support and empower, but also protect persons with disabilities.
Yeah. And in the webinar, we have the keynote speaker is Mrs. Sharon Clark-Rowley. I know that she is also an attorney and, you know, an advocate for persons living with and families, you know, dealing with Down syndrome persons. And we also have Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Honorable Dr. Nian Gatsby Dolly, the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy, and especially of note, featured speaker, self-advocate Rochelle Passad.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we have our international self-advocate, Eileen Dunn from Ireland. Her mom was actually living in Trinidad here for a while. She was a lecturer at UWI.
Yeah.
Right. So it's great to have Eileen. You know, I met her before. She's very independent. And just like when I met the other self-advocates with Down syndrome, when I traveled to the different conferences, I'd see how independent they are and ask myself, why are they so different from the persons with Down syndrome living here in Trinidad and Tobago? And it is just because they had the advantage of living in an inclusive society. They were included in the educational system. they went to different classes, but they also went to the same classes.
Yeah.
So the special ed program was within the school, and they moved up with their peers. They were never kept behind. So when we think about the fact that our children are not getting that opportunity, well, some of them now are due to our advocacy, and Rochelle is one of them. You know, we also have Pedro, who are in primary school now, and we are looking forward for them to be the trendsetters in transitioning to secondary school, which has never happened before in Trinidad and Tobago. Just like how Christy D'Souza was the first young woman with Down syndrome to get a 2-year OJT contract with Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Youth Affairs.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about breaking ground, and she's performing very, very well.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a charity thing where they just put her in the position to say, oh, we are helping people who are special. You know, she actually has to function as an admin assistant, and she goes through the same performance appraisal as everyone else.
Great.
So she has to perform.
Well, we're going to go to final thoughts now. This was an excellent interview, and of course we're going to have more from the Down Syndrome Family Network. Laurina, what are your final thoughts?
I would say that everyone needs to be an advocate. So not just us who actively are part of the Down Syndrome Family Network, but everybody in the wider society needs to be more informed so that they will be able to push forward the agenda to protect persons, well, not protect, but to empower and to give them the access that they need, and to make sure that they have their human rights.
Great. So, Mr. Niles, Mr. Ramkaran, thank you so much for joining us today to give us a little bit more information about the webinar, the legislation, and of course the reason why we make the fashion statement on March 21st when we rock our very colorful socks. So, ladies and gentlemen, viewers, we are going to come back with another segment right after this break.